to get to chat more with, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're recording on this end, so should be
Cool.
good.
So basically, just want to start off with like just a little bit of background info, like your name, how long you've been doing it, stuff like that, just to get people that don't know who you are a little idea.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Kyle McDougall. I am a photographer working primarily with film, a little bit of digital, and been doing this for every time I say how long I've been doing it, I say like a different number. So, but for like somewhere, I would say 13, 14, getting close to 15 years. And
So
sorry,
no, you're
also
good.
a filmmaker. I'm starting to try and add that in more because I always
Yeah.
kept the two separate before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into your filmmaking career as well. But the first thing I like to start out with is like the first memory of photography that you have.
Mm-hmm.
If you can tell us a
Um,
little bit about that.
yeah. So photography for me started out, well, I think when I first started to really get into it, I moved out to Western Canada. So I'm originally from Ontario, Canada, which is, I lived close to Toronto. So kind of like central, more eastern. But I moved out west and out into the mountains into a place called Banff in Alberta, which is in the Rocky Mountains. Just beautiful place. And just picked up a camera. I think I was around 18 or 19 years old. Always had an interest in like visual arts and stuff like that, but never up until that point in my life had done anything. So picked up like a Canon, I think it was like a EOS Digital Rebel when they first came out. So I was like
Nice.
super stoked. And yeah, it was purely just like curiosity, fueled by just this amazing environment that was so drastically different for me compared to where I grew up. So that's really where my kind of first interest started. Still there?
Yeah.
Sorry, you're gonna edit this, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
For
cool.
sure.
I apologize.
Definitely.
My mail thing just popped up and I thought we got cut off.
Yeah, if at
But
any point you lose your train of thought, just gather it and then just go from there. I'm gonna be chopping it up and stuff. So
cool. Yeah, all good. No, my mail thing covered the whole screen. I thought you disappeared for a second. Um, I'll pick up where I left off. So yeah, basically it was just this initial kind of curiosity fueled by this amazing environment that was so drastically different than where I grew up, and it really kind of accelerated quick from there. So that's what sparked my initial kind of excitement for photography, and it was all based around this traditional landscape photography, obviously because of the environment out there, and then that's really what kind of sent me in that direction for a good chunk of my career. So when I moved away from there and moved back home, I continued. It almost, not only did it kind of give me this love for photography, but it also gave me this love for the wilderness. So I really got into like backcountry camping and canoeing and all this stuff, and that really tied into the work that I used to do. So yeah, that really kind of kicked off and fueled like the first 9 or 10 years of my photography career until I ultimately got to a point where I kind of fell out of love with that type of work. And then got to the point where I'm at now.
so I wanted to ask if you had, because like I went to college and my degree was in TV and film. I was wanting to ask you if like what your background is in schooling and stuff like that. If you went to like a liberal arts college and got your degree there, what was your steps in that?
Yeah. So when I moved back home after being out west, I was a couple of years into, um, this this kind of newfound passion, and I also really got into snowboarding, and that kicked off this interest in like snowboard films, and that kicked off an interest. A lot of snowboard films back at that time in the early 2000s, people were shooting on like super 16 and 16 mil film,
Right.
and I always like, and that was at a time when like digital video wasn't really great yet, so I
Mm-hmm.
was like had this crazy obsession with film, and then that sparked me going to film school. So back in, I think it was 04 05, I ended up going to like a community college for a 2-year film production course, which was amazing. It was a really, really cool way to learn, just because everything we worked with was film. So there was barely any video whatsoever, and we got to shoot a ton of 16 mil and super 16 and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, which was amazing.
Yeah, so when I was in college from 2010 to 2014, so I think I was like in between of like the DSLR and like people
Yeah.
getting rid of film and stuff like that. So I think I personally was just in a really bad spot with like a TV and film degree, because the school that I went to, like we were accredited and stuff, but it just seemed like I had the wrong idea going into school. And I was wanting to ask you that if you had like, because I thought I would like get a degree, get out, get a job,
Yeah.
and like people would just hand me a job because I had a degree. But I kind of missed out on the fact that you had to make so many connections in school, and
Sure.
you had to know a lot of people. So I was wanting to ask you if you kind of felt like that, or you kind of had the right idea from the start that you had to like make connections and just work your ass off after you got out, and people wouldn't just hand you a job.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, like I've always been the type of person where like if I'm interested in something, I kind of go all in really hard. Like, and it has to be something that I'm really, really kind of passionate about. And for me, like film production and photography was that. So it's like, school to me wasn't anything other than just this like amazing resource and structured environment to just make a ton of stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that kind of, I like for me, it had nothing to do about like graduation and getting like a diploma or anything like that. It was
Mm-hmm.
more so just like, here I can go to this place and I'm going to be able to make a ton of stuff for 2 years and have access to all this amazing equipment. And I'm going to basically work my ass off, because if I wasn't in school, I would be trying to make as much stuff as possible, but not have the same resources. So I think something that helped was just like this. I was at a point where I just was so passionate about making stuff and trying to get better and trying to learn. So that really helped. And I also like, I went to film school and we got trained towards like motion picture film and going into like, the film business, making movies and stuff. But I always knew that like, I never wanted to go and work on a film set because there were too many moving parts. Like I'm still to this day, and I think it's why I enjoy YouTube so much. Like I love this kind of like guerrilla filmmaking, like
Mm-hmm.
minimalist crew, like wearing a bunch of different hats and making things work with like not a ton of equipment or a ton of manpower. So it really kind of, when I got out of school, I knew that's the direction I wanted to go in, and that's kind of continued like that even up until now with all the work I did.
So that was another thing I was wanting to get to, because I watched the video that you did on ProMIS filters, I guess. You put in a lot of snippets of your documentary work,
Mm.
and I went to your Vimeo page after that, and I just watched like every single video that you made, and they were so good and such like good portraits of those people. And it's just like it's so different from the work that you post photography wise, because you don't post a lot of portraits.
I know.
So I was wanting to kind of ask you what the difference is between the two, with shooting video and then shooting photography, and just the differences that you see in what you like to shoot.
Yeah, I love that you asked that, because it's funny. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, just because I don't think I really ever stepped back took a step back and realized that until quite recently, where I was like, my still work is no people at all. And I talk often about wanting to shoot people more. And then my filmmaking work is these like very intimate portraits of people's
Mm-hmm.
lives, which is like, so two completely different worlds. And I think photography for me has always been this like very solo escape type endeavor, where it's me and I'm going to these environments. Like even a lot of the subjects I photograph, it's these desolate areas, it's these abandoned areas. And I think in a way, it's similar to the landscape photography I did, where I was in the wilderness by myself. So like all of these places I'm going for my still work are areas where I can go, I can be by myself. I can kind of detach. I can get like immersed in my work and in what I'm doing. And I think I really, really enjoy that. And I never go really and shoot with any other people. When I do, I never really make work that I'm happy with.
Mm-hmm.
But on the filmmaking side of things, I think what I enjoy so much about doing these short films about people is just like the opportunities that arise when you dig into someone's life, right? So it'll start with like, searching for like a topic, and then you find a person associated with that topic. And then when you dig into that person, you find the environment they live in, and you find, the story about their life and struggles and ups and downs. And there's just so many creative opportunities. So recently, I've decided that moving forward, I really want to approach a body of work with my still photography in a very similar style to my filmmaking work. So I want to go and I want to find a person and I want to shoot like a still photography project about someone's life. I thought that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would definitely be something that I would be interested in seeing from you, because after I watched your video work, I was just like, you obviously you have like the ability to like talk with people and like make them feel comfortable in front of a camera. So I'm like, he definitely needs to translate that to photography, because I I'm in love with like Kyler Zelony's work. You had him on your
Yeah.
podcast, and it's just like it's so like intimate, and just the way that he can talk to people and make them feel comfortable. It's like really admirable. And yeah, I was wanting to talk about your podcast too, because you do have a lot of people on there that do shoot portraits and or just interact with people a lot. So I was kind of wanting to see if you that was like a subconscious thing where you're trying to like learn from them and like kind of get their ideas on things, or if you're interested in that because of the video work you do and things like that.
Yeah, it's funny. Ever since I like the past few years when I went through this kind of switch and focus in terms of subject matter and working with film and all this kind of stuff with my photography work, I've discovered a lot of, people's work like Kyler's, these portfolios that include not only environments, but also people as well. And it's just really, really interested me. So I think, we all kind of carry like habits and skills through as we kind of go throughout our careers, right? So I think for me right now, it's like it is really funny to look at it, because it's like, I'm very comfortable approaching someone and making like a film about their life, but I think I've almost carried habits from my landscape work to the work I'm doing now, because I never shot people for that stuff. So it's like I just continuing in that way. So yeah, in a way, I think I really enjoy talking to people like Kyler, or I just had on Rombi, who's very, very talented. Almost all her work is of people, because I just am fascinated when people create these portfolios that include all of these strangers and their stories, essentially. And I admire the kind of the skill that it takes to do that, from both like a technical standpoint and also from just like a face-to-face kind of conversation standpoint of, going out and approaching these people and I guess being okay with failing at times.
Yeah. I kind of have that same anxiety, like because like obviously I have some anxiety when I go to photograph a stranger, but I almost have more anxiety when I go up to like a abandoned building or just a stranger's like house and like photographing for that from the outside. It's kind of like I'm just a trespasser in some sort of way. And I was wondering if you ever get like those feelings when you're in a new place, or if you're in somewhere that's you're not from, if you ever get those feelings when you're like photographing those places.
Yeah, all the time. And it doesn't, like, I've gotten better at dealing with it, but I'm telling myself stories constantly. I think it's just natural, right? We all do it day to day, but especially when, some of the places that you're going, your mind can just come up with so many different stories, right? Especially if you're, I don't know, say you're in a place like the Salton Sea, right? Which is, to me, this incredibly fascinating, amazing landscape. But it's just so different, right? And some of the areas that you're in there, I mean, some of the neighborhoods are completely normal, but then you get to these ends of the road and there's just like things you've never seen before in these different environments. And it's easy for your mind to start, making stories. And you think that, are people watching you and thinking you're, trespassing or vandalizing, like all of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, that happens to me all the time. And I feel like I've gotten better at it, like dealing with it, but it certainly still happens for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's just going to amplify a little bit more since you did just move across the world into you're in Europe, right? Where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm in England, just south of London. Yeah.
So have you done a lot of exploring around there, or obviously you haven't had that much time, but uh how is the landscape? How does the landscapes differ from Canada and like the Southwest where you photograph mostly in the US?
Yeah, you know what? It's like very different. And so I've been here like a number, like my wife is from the UK. We've been together for a long time. So I've been over here a lot, but it's always been to like visit and to see family and stuff like that. So what's funny is, we've been in the process of moving over here. I came here in March, right during lockdown, went into lockdown. So for 3 months, it was the longest time I'd ever spent in England, but we were like confined to the neighborhood. So, and then I left, went back to Canada. Now I just got back and I've had to quarantine for 2 weeks, mandatory. So for me, England feels like this, 10-kilometer radius of bubble we're in. And I've shot some photography around here and done a few videos, but it's like nothing that interests me. But the landscape is very, very different. And, just from the research I've done, planning some future trips, I really want to do a lot of exploring. Because what's interesting to me is like, I just did a trip back home where I went north in the province I'm from, and I drove for 8 hours. And I was still in the province, right? There was another 10 hours of driving if you wanted. And here, I'm looking up on the maps and it's like, if I drove 8 hours, I could make it to Germany, So it's just like this entirely new set of possibilities for me. So the landscape is definitely different, but for me, that's really exciting because the Southwest work, I feel like as much as I could shoot there forever, essentially, because I love those landscapes, I feel like it's time to move on. I know it's time to move on for sure. I'm ready to create something different. And then just the work I was creating back home, I just never really had enough time there. I need to be immersed there as well. So I'm really like being here now with this entirely new landscape that feels foreign to me is really exciting. And I think it'll take some time to get accustomed to just like style and color and tones and all that kind of stuff, but something I'm definitely ready for at this point in my career.
So when you picture it in your head about doing more stories on people, what exactly is that? And is that more like finding strangers or like getting in touch with certain, like what are you picturing in your mind when you think about taking your work more towards interacting with people and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's funny, like for a while there, being influenced by like Alex Soth, someone whose work I absolutely love, I'm sure, or obviously a lot of other people do as well. But, his work being done, these like portraits of places with a lot of people involved, right? For a while, that type of approach really interested me, and it still does for sure. But it's funny, as I've started to think more about the filmmaking work I do, this like single subject work, and that started to kind of click. I've really started to think like it'd be cool to just find like a person in, maybe that's like an older person in some small village in like northern Scotland on an island who's like the last person that does X, Y, or Z, right? And you go there, so you're photographing a subject, but you're also photographing like the details of their life. You're photographing the landscape they live in. So really almost like one of my films, but from a still photography standpoint. And I think that right now that's for me an exciting way to like start to branch over to this, different type of work. And it also, with those films I make, like I said, the one thing that I love is creatively, all of a sudden when you find a subject, visually you're immersed in their environment, and it's like their home has tons of potential. They have tons of potential. The thing they do, there's tons of potential there for images. So from a still photography standpoint as well, that's like, it's not just like going out for a drive and trying to find random things that interest you. Now it's like you have this kind of box that you can go and search in and find all these things that all link together. So I think that really, really excites me.
Yeah, I think it can definitely get overwhelming if you look at the space you're in like square miles and stuff like that. When you're driving around looking for the perfect scene or something like that, I think it really does help when you just pick something and really pick out the small details that really bring the story like together, like you said. And I was wanting to ask if you about An American Mile and your Southwest documentation. That's going to be a book at some point, right?
Yeah, that's the plan for sure. It's on the to-do list.
So how far along are you in that little journey?
Not that far. Like initial talks with a publisher, and then also just like sending a basically a collection of images off to just kind of get some things rolling a little bit and see about potential for length and sequencing and stuff like that. So still very, very young.
Mm-hmm. So when you were photographing for that, were you just driving around and just, did you have anything set in mind, or were you just taking a road and just seeing where it takes you and then stumbling upon something and just photographing? Like what's your thought process when you're driving around, or when you finally do stumble upon a scene? What are you trying to capture of it?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that project like really didn't start to develop probably until like 6 months into shooting it, because it came at a point where like that type of work was a new discovery for me. And it like I started photographing the subjects that I did in the style and way that I did, purely based off of just like intuition and excitement, you know? So like there was nothing really that was like fueling my, like what, I wasn't like out looking for something because I saw something like that or anything. It was just like, here's this new environment that is like, I'm so fascinated by these incredible like things you're finding in these small towns and these back roads and these ghost towns. And it was just like, I couldn't get enough of exploring these places. So it was really just based off of like, yeah, intuition and excitement. So like we were doing a big road trip at the time when I was working on a good chunk of that portfolio. So, you know, we would travel through Arizona, Southern California, Nevada, and we had a trailer. So we'd set up in areas for like 4 or 5 days. And I would just take off for a day with our pickup and go and like, you know, Google map places and little tiny towns. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, you know, I wish I could say that like there was a lot more kind of reasoning and structure behind those images at the start. But I think it was a really good thing that a bulk of the project happened that way. And then I was able to kind of sit with that work like a year into it and be like, okay, I love these areas. What made me make these images this way, and like what attracts me to this? And then I was able to start to kind of make sense of it all for when I worked on it for about, I think I did 4 more trips over the next 2 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's really important for people to just like, it's easy to complicate things at times, right? And try and overthink things at the start. And I think it is good to sit with your work and really kind of examine it. But I think at the start, it's good to just see where your interest takes you. You know, just
Right.
go and create work naturally, whatever excites you and you like, regardless of what it is. And then like once you build up some of that work, you know, take a look at it and be like, okay, like why like what is this? You know, why am I making this? Why do I like it? So yeah, I think it was really neat. You know, the next body of work I do, I mean, as I've already mentioned, I'm going to approach differently. But I think it's just because I've grown as an artist and become a little more comfortable with like my vision moving forward now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was looking back, because I went through your whole Instagram page, and it's just, I've never seen a more consistent like look with colors, composition, like everything. So was that like, did you at any point like go back and like kind of curate that to look that specific way, or has that always been just your look, your consistency, and everything just paying off to look that like consistent?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I often will look like you know how there's some people out there who will like talk about these really deliberate choices they make with their Instagram feed, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm like pretty sloppy, and sometimes I'll look at mine and I'll look back and it won't feel like that to me. So it's cool it comes across like that. Thank you. But no, like that all of that work and the decisions I made from like composition and color and all that just happened. Like that is just it's funny like you know I've said it before when I talk like sometimes when I shoot digital people will ask me like, oh, how do you get your digital images to look so much like your film? And I'm just like, I kind of stress the importance of like just working, like creating a lot and working away and building up a style over time. And it just happens naturally. So like when I edit my digital images, like I'm not sitting there with like a film shot beside it trying to like, you know, tweak and match things. It's like the decisions I make and the edits I make just happen based off of kind of what looks good to me on the screen when I'm doing it. So I think all of that work just kind of like what came out of me. And it's interesting because like I keep talking about this landscape work that I did, but the work that I did before was like super dramatic light and saturated colors and like, waiting for like the perfect sliver of light at the right time. And now like now I'm shifted completely. I'm shooting like 35 millimeter film at like 12:30
Yeah.
p.m., midday sun, just like nasty. Well, I love the look. It fits. I feel like it fits the work, but just very, very different than what I was doing before. But it just felt right, and I was really excited with how it was all coming together.
Yeah, one of my favorite photos of yours is the Roy's sign, I believe,
Yeah,
through
yeah,
through the window. And when you, because obviously that's a very popular place to
very,
photograph.
for sure.
So when you showed up, was it in your head to like, I'm going to photograph this from a different perspective that people have seen, or was that just in your head that you want this place to look how you perceive it?
Yeah, like there was definitely no thought of like I need to come here and make something different. Um, it was like the thing I like about Roy's. It's been photographed like a million times, right?
Hmm.
But I love areas like that because Roy's you can go to, you can park your car, and it's like Amboy is this relatively small area, but you could just stay there for hours and you can explore all these little buildings and you can completely tune out. And that for that image, it was just like, wandering through these buildings. And I went into one, and the way the light was hitting the wall and the how it was like the shadows were interacting with the light and frame using the window for a frame. So just like purely based off of just like having fun and seeing what I could discover. And that's what I love most about photography, and I think a big reason why I shoot by myself a lot of the time is because it's cool to just like completely tune out and go to these areas and just like search for really interesting compositions. Not that
Mm,
every image needs to be this like really super kind of
right.
intricate unique image, um but yeah, that one kind of just came together how it did based off of me searching around Amboy for a couple hours. But it was a fun one.
Yeah, I had another photo that I wanted you to kind of, you have a lot of photos like this where you're just in like abandoned places, and let's see where it's at. I think it's one of like a blue kitchen.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know the one.
That guy, if you can see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was in
S-
Nevada.
So when you're, are those just like abandoned? Because like the first thought that I have when I see, because there's some places like that in Missouri, but the first thought that I have is like, I don't want to go here and get either killed by someone or the cops show up because there's a no trespassing sign. Like, how do you kind of deal with those fears that I have? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think so. That one in particular was in Nevada. It was this old abandoned motel. It was in the absolute middle of nowhere. That area was probably the most remote that we were in during our trip. It was by a place called Walker Lake, which is like um this massive body of water near some like massive munitions depot and some old town. But that place, I just like it was so quiet around there. There was no one around. But yeah, absolutely. Like you're walking up to it. I think there was like wires hanging and water dripping, and there was like some weird like little fire alarm like beeping. So like just a weird environment, right? And of
Hmm.
course your mind's like, you're looking around and over your shoulder. But um fortunately for me, like when I find a place like that where I'm like, oh, okay, like visually it's super cool, the excitement takes over and I just kind of tune out.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think it's just a matter of like the reality is like these are just stories we're telling ourselves, right? Like when you're in these places, like I understand where you're coming from, and I do the exact same thing. But it's like if the cops come 99% of the time, like we aren't doing anything wrong, right? If you're there like smashing windows and spray painting shit, like yeah,
Right.
you might want to look over your shoulder. But like I think what we're all doing is pretty innocent, and like for me, I just think about why I'm doing it, right? Like I really, really like want to document these. I have a fascination with documenting these places that are, not going to be around for much longer, and then just also the curiosity of how they ended up, like how they stand nowadays. So I think it's a matter of just like trying to block out the voices in your head and the best you can.
So yeah, I wanted to kind of dive into your YouTube, not too much, but I wanted to kind of ask you what the YouTube landscape was, because you've been on YouTube for a while. You're kind of like one of the first to kind of get film photography going and popular on YouTube, I would say. And I wanted to kind of see how that whole, like the world of YouTube was when you first started, and kind of what made you start up a YouTube channel. Was it like a lack of a certain thing, or because I noticed you do a lot of like, you do a lot of gear videos, but the informative, like exposure latitudes, like how to spot meter, stuff like that. It's like, obviously those are the ones that are the most beneficial for people.
For sure.
So what kind of was your mindset going into like the world of YouTube?
Yeah, so I started my channel during that road trip I was talking about. So I basically left my video production business, and I, I I think it came about from two things. One, getting into film photography again, and I was just learning a ton, right? Like there's so much I didn't know, even though I'd been a photographer for a long time. I was very fresh in the film world and learning all of these things. And then the YouTube channel kind of gave me this outlet, this creative outlet for my video work still, because I wasn't doing it anymore. I was on the road, it'd been a long time, and I hadn't really made anything. So I thought it could be cool to start something up and give me a creative outlet for my kind of filmmaking video work. But then I could also just make videos based off of the stuff that I was learning at the time. And I just thought that could help people, even though like there's obviously lots of content on YouTube. There was at the time too, but I just thought, you know, things like the exposure test came from me being like, oh, I'm just learning about film. I'm learning about, the ability to overexpose film. It's, such a different concept than working with digital. So why don't I just do a test because I'm curious, and then I'll just make a video about it, and hopefully it helps people. And I think, excuse me, I think that continued with my channel, and I hope it kind of still comes across that way today, is like, I want to make stuff that's obviously entertaining, but I also want to make stuff that is just valuable to people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt very weird, like, because you make a YouTube channel and it's like about yourself, right? But my kind of goal and what I've discovered is like, even with social media as a whole, it's like, even though it's about you, try and make it about other people as much as you can, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
remove the ego as much as you can from it. So it's like, I always want to try and make sure that the content I'm putting out has some sort of, it doesn't always have to be like technical knowledge, like let me help you with this problem, but even more so nowadays is like just from like almost like a creative inspiration standpoint, like just really trying to spread like positivity and inspiration in the photography world and encourage people to like, go out there and create and be unique and filter out there's so much bullshit and so much drama and so much complaining in all
Mm-hmm.
of the online landscapes, right? Not just photography, that I kind of just want to try and be like a contrast to that and like support other creatives. So yeah, the YouTube, I kind of went off your question a little bit, but that's been really, I think, my underlying goal with the channel all along, is just to make content that helps people in one way or another, if that's technical or if that's also creative.
Yeah, your video about creative burnout, that like came at the perfect time for me, because at the time I was just like making stuff that I was not happy with, and I was just doing it for like Instagram and trying to make like YouTube videos and stuff like that, and just going out specifically for a video. And in that
Yeah.
video, you said you were making I think it was a camera review
Yeah,
video.
the day before. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of dig in on your thoughts with uh like having trouble with taking photos just for YouTube and taking photos for yourself, and if you ever feel like a pressure from the audience that you have grown in regards to that.
Yeah, 100%. But I wouldn't say it's from the audience that I've grown. I would say it's more so just from myself and learning how to navigate this world, because yeah, the reality is like you said, sometimes you go out to make a video and you might not feel like shooting photos at all, and then you force yourself to, and you make something that you don't even like, and you're like doing it just to make a video. So, but it's just a weird world to navigate, right? Because it's like certain videos do better than other ones, right? And as much as I try and avoid that trap of thinking like, oh, is this going to be like I always want to just try and think like what is going to be helpful and then make that. But there are times where you think like, oh, it's going to be helpful, but it might not be that popular.
Yeah.
Right? Like that creative burnout video, for example, like I felt so great about the message in it. Right.
Mm,
Uh, but like it didn't do good. Right.
mhm.
Which like isn't a big deal. But I'd be lying if I said that there haven't been times where I've thought like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do a video like that again because it didn't do that good. Right. Even
Right.
like
Yeah.
as much as I try and avoid getting trapped in that cycle at all. So I think the YouTube world and the social media world is just one that you got to constantly try and get better at navigating it as a creative, because I think it really pays to just be authentic for your like personal style, but also just for your like insanity as well.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, there's just times where like I was just doing a schedule for my YouTube now that I've started to try and do it kind of full time. And, sitting here thinking about like what I'm going to do each week is tough because I'm just like, I don't want to shoot that. Like, I don't want to shoot that much.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe like, I don't have ideas like, but I guess some of it you do as long as it comes back to, in the end of the video, somehow help someone, I think is what
Mhm.
matters most.
Yeah. I think authenticity is one of the bigger ones that I want to try to come across with not only my channel, but just my work and whatever online presence that I have. And one of the first videos that I saw that kind of explained that to me within regards to you was when you did the speed graphic video and
Oh yeah.
you you were just messing up and you wasted some sheets of film. And I just love to see that because I'm like, if you were to just look at your work online, it would just be like all these perfect photos and just perfect compositions, perfect colors. And you don't really see like the people messing up and stuff like that. So it kind of like, obviously you weren't like some like superhuman person that I was looking up to, but it brought you back down to reality and knowing that you can
For
make
sure.
mistakes. And then I was like, well, if he can make mistakes, then I can go out and fuck up some sheets of film. And I definitely did that my first time as well. So yeah, I think authenticity is like one of the best things to have in being online in a world like this.
Man, you got it. It's so important, just again for your own insanity, but then also just like for longevity, right? Like I've always treated social media like it's just me online. Like it's not an opportunity for me to like craft some different person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna be like, and then also just because I have a YouTube channel doesn't automatically mean that I have to know everything and I'm some expert. Like you could start a YouTube channel and be a complete beginner, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm on there, like again, anything I talk about, I feel confident in. Like I obviously only try and share and teach something that I feel
Right.
confident I've learned over the years, but I'm certainly not trying to be like, film photography masterclass with Kyle McDougall. Like I have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of people's work who I admire and look up to. And I never want to be like, I never want to have it all figured out anyways, that would take the fun out of it for sure. So um, I think just being real and being authentic is so important. And then I think eventually you find other people, like the other people online who are like that as well. And I think that's a really good community to kind of be part of.
So where do you see, like, I know you said you had some ideas going with your YouTube, but with everything going on and like the move, where do you see your YouTube going in the future? Or I know you've explained like some of your portrait work that you want to do. Like, where do you see just everything kind of coalescing into like a little, like the American Mile photo book? Kind of where do you see everything going from here?
Yeah, so I feel like with my YouTube I've started to get like a really clear idea lately of kind of how like what my style and kind of purpose on there is. And I feel like a lot of the content I've made lately, I like bringing my like filmmaking style into it. So making almost these like films about my experience going and doing something, and then there's some sort of like message or lesson or something in there. But I keep coming back to this like trying to spread this message of like, creative inspiration and authenticity and being unique and just really trying to be some sort of voice in the photography community that's like supporting people and encouraging people. And, not just like, I'm not trying to just like hand out pats on the back to everyone and be like, everyone's perfect. You know what I mean? But like, I want to be the opposite of the person who says like your photos suck, right? I want to be the person who like tries to encourage people to like go and create whatever interests them, right? Like, don't worry if someone thinks it's stupid, like follow that path and see where it goes. So with my YouTube content, I want to work, like, I feel like that gives me a way to like, do these trips, share the work I'm creating, and also work in these messages that I feel like are having some sort of impact. So that type of stuff, I think, is what I really want to focus on moving forward. And I think that'll lend well. Just, I'm planning a bunch of trips, and it's going to be a time of discovery for me, right? Like starting on a new project. I want to share just kind of the ups and downs of that, right? Like talk about finding subjects, right? Starting a new project, seeing where it goes, seeing where it doesn't go, visiting these places. So it's just been a balance for me, being a balance and a struggle, being a filmmaker who cares so much about how the video is going to look, that it's like I'm like have this dual reality when I'm making a YouTube video. So I'm still trying to find out how to navigate that, because like obviously I'm trying to make photos, which are really, really important to me. But then I'm like trying to make a story, and I'm trying to film. And so,
yeah, that's tough. Like people don't understand how, because when I first started my YouTube, I'm like, oh, I'll just go out and make a video of me taking pictures. And then you're trying to set up the tripod and you're trying to get the audio right. And there's the wind's blowing and you're not going to be able to hear anything. And it's like,
yeah,
on top of that, I have to make a photo. Like,
yeah,
it sounds like such a dumb problem to have, but I don't think people truly realize how hard it is.
it's the most difficult thing for me. And like, if I didn't have the video production background, like, not to say I wouldn't care about it, but I feel like it would be a little bit easier because I wouldn't be so attached. Like, when I go and I'm working on a YouTube video, I'm approaching it the same way I would as if I was like out filming, making a film. Like I still, I'm getting super particular about things. And so I'm trying to get a little bit like more loose on that side of things. But yeah, well, I'll just, see where things go in the future. I'm departing from the commercial video world, which was like 90% of my business for the past 10 years. So for me, I'm at this like kind of crazy, intense crossroad of like moving to a new country, have a newborn, COVID's going on, and I'm trying to go YouTube full time, right? So it's just trying to, but the challenge is kind of exciting. And I think the whole YouTube thing is like a lot of work, a big investment in terms of like man hours, right? If you want to try and start getting it to a place where it can sustain you, if that's what you want to do. Not that everyone has to do that, but yeah.
So I have two more questions. One would be, are you looking at doing your next projects on large format?
Yes and no. So like, it's funny. I was just thinking about that yesterday, actually. It'll 100% at least be 6.7. It's either going to be the Pentax 6.7 or it's going to be large format. And as much as I want to commit to large format, I'm very interested in using both. Just because obviously the aspect ratio is the same, so they mix really nice. 6.7, you can still, is a beautiful negative, ton of detail. So I almost thought it'd be cool to like work with both, just because the 6.7 would give you a little more kind of flexibility and portability if you were working with a subject and you wanted to, be a little more loose with things. But then if you found like the one like perfect shot that you were super excited about, you could do that on 4.5. So yeah, I'll see how it goes. I mean, 4x5 is definitely going to be part of it because it's a medium that I absolutely love. I know you've been shooting a bunch of it recently, and it's really, really, the process of it attracts me a lot. And then obviously the images and the amount of detail is amazing. So yeah, it's either going to be a mix or all 4.5. We'll have to wait and see where it goes.
Yeah. How are you enjoying using the Intrepid, or are you looking at upgrading that in the future, possibly?
What's funny? So that's obviously the first, well, I had the Speed Graphic or Crown Graphic for a very short period of time, but the Intrepid's like the first camera I've worked with a lot. And Like I love it. It's a great camera. I had a couple like critiques just about no hard stops for some of the movements,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I think like my first thought after like getting excited about 4.5 is I'm looking at like Shenhaus and stuff online, right? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
what's next? But then I'm just like it works. It's great. It's super
Yeah.
lightweight. I installed like a Fresnel. I'm like, why? You know, why would I upgrade?
Yeah. It's so like I actually just got rid of mine because I got a speed graphic and I
Oh,
just
nice.
like, yeah, I just like I didn't use that many movements, or
Yeah,
I used a lot of movements at the beginning because it was new and I was like, oh,
yeah,
this looks cool, completely blurring out the bottom
yeah,
half of the picture. But yeah, I just like the speed graphic is just so easy to set up. You don't have to deal with anything.
yeah,
So
yeah. And there's
so
something about like the just working with a camera that old that has like a
oh
special
yeah.
feel to it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. I have the anniversary one from like 1944 or something. And
That's
I'm like,
cool.
I'm sure at some point it's gonna like break and like the shutter's gonna rip or something. But I mean, it was $100, so you can't go wrong with
Nice.
that. But
I think it's easy for people's guard to go up quickly as soon as they hear any critique
oh yeah,
um, on stuff. You know, sometimes people.
mine definitely does. And at first, I'm just like, I'm angry because I'm like, who is this person to call me out? And then if I sit back and relax and take a second look at it, I'm like, okay, maybe they do have something like that could be fixed. So yeah, I think that just has to do with like Instagram and the world being so fast and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, I've learned more about photography and everything like in the past year with just YouTube and literally listen to like your podcasts and other podcasts and stuff like that. It's like it's crazy the amount of information that you can get from people that are uh just in it and have experienced everything. And I think that's what I'm trying to like this whole interview with you, just like getting your work out there and showing people how you've progressed and the things you've experienced and what you've gone through just to help them. And that I think that's the whole point of like everything and being online.
yeah, dude. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. Yeah, with what you're doing. I also think, like I said, I think you're killing it with all your content. I love what you're doing, so don't stop.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And like I certainly go through all the same shit you do too, with like the roadblocks and man, like I'm like waiting for the day. I'm like, oh well, like I have to figure this shit out at some point, right? Like
I
how to
know.
navigate this online
Yeah,
world, and then it's like,
you were talking about Alex Soth. I'm like, does he go through these same like thoughts too? And like all the greats out there, I'm like, were they thinking about this dumb shit that I'm thinking about? It's just, it's yeah,
yeah, I think
it's tough, but
every creative, every artist, anyone putting themselves out there, just like, yeah, we all probably can relate in a lot of ways for sure.
all right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time again. Yeah, I'll keep you
All
updated
good.
on everything. Hope you get settled down and have a nice move and start putting out some really good videos because I'll be watching until the end of time.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. And thanks again for doing this. I really, really appreciate the interest and the support and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It means a lot.
no problem.
Yeah. Okay, man. I will send you this audio probably tonight.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay, dude. You too. See you, man.
See ya.